All right, we're back on the show. We got Pete Durrett, also known as Pete Powers. He's a pro wrestler. He is a supplement expert and my former tag team partner in the wrestling ring. So good to have you, Pete. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey man, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity. And we're not a tag team anymore? What kind of BS is that?
That's true. I guess, we never officially broke up. So I think there's a reunion tour in the cards.
Well, we're all learning things today.
Absolutely. Sweet. So you spent many years in the supplement industry. So just give us a little background on that before we dive into the actual educational portion.
Yeah, so I've been in and out of the supplement industry for over 10 years. I worked closely with Popeye Supplements in Canada for about 8 years, building stores, everything from education, formulating products with different well-known brands and stuff like that within the supplement industry, as well as educating myself. Went to school, and now I still am in close contact with a lot of people in the supplement industry, but currently I have a cannabis researching license. So that's kind of where I've shifted these days personally.
Very cool. So as a trainer, and this is why I wanted to do this episode, I get so many questions about all sorts of supplements. I think some of them are great kind of foundational stuff. I think some stuff is just sort of fads that come in and out. So why don't we start with kind of the basics? Let's talk about the protein powders and what you think would be sort of your foundational stuff.
Sure. I think one of the major things to understand too, when we're talking about foundational stuff, obviously that's what you want to build on, of course. But one of the major things to, I think, keep in mind is the basic science of things. The human body anatomy, these things have not changed for a long, long time. So there is a lot of things rooted in science that you can find and apply to your supplement regime or your workout regime when it comes to repairing the body or learning the systems of the body and sort of what nutrients and micronutrients and how they can help us out. So if you want to start, protein's a good one. In terms of 3 of the basic things that you would need, whether I, or anybody likes it or not, you need protein. Whatever those sources are is up to you. One of the other things about supplementing is it's just that you are supplementing. This is not meant to be the core source of protein, if you will, in your diet. This is something you're supplementing in order to reach your dietary needs or your nutritional needs or your diet, whatever that may be, right? So it's important to keep that in mind too here. We have other sources. When we're talking about protein, I would say the 3 major ones that you're going to come across are whey protein, whey isolate protein, a vegetarian protein or a vegan protein. And I'll get into that because there's many, 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 many different types of that. So if you want to dive into that in a minute, we can do that as well.
Yes.
And then there's casein protein as well, which I would add as kind of like a 4th one, sort of in terms of if we're categorizing the broad scheme of things when it comes to protein.
That's great. So why don't we sort of just quickly run through each of those? So whey protein, what is whey protein? Why would I want to use that?
Yeah, so if you have a whey protein, right, this is something that a proper whey protein should test at about 83% purity. So that means it's 83% pure protein when you look at it. Now, not all whey proteins, not all vegetarian proteins, not all proteins are created equal, if you will. There are multiple different factors in how these are made, sourced, produced, how they interact with our body, how bioavailable they are. We'll talk about some more of that in a minute. But whey protein generally is very bioavailable. Excuse me. Whey protein is generally very bioavailable to our body, so it absorbs fairly well. There is a higher percentage of carbs and lactose and fat in a whey protein, which will bring us to sort of the next one, which is a whey isolate. So the whey isolate protein is filtered, it has a different filtration system, and basically you have reduced the amount of carbs and fats in it, as well as the lactose. So you don't have that. So for someone like myself, for example, I'm partially lactose intolerant. A lot of the whey proteins don't sit well with me. And again, not all dairy producers, depending on what country you live in, depending on what the standards of practices and things are, not all dairy is the same, not all protein is the same, similar to what I was saying earlier. So a whey protein isolate, for example, it typically is leaner and cleaner, if you will, in terms of, again, your carbs and fat content. So if you're someone who's looking for lower carbs and fat content, as well as a higher percentage of pure protein, as well as just an overall higher protein per scoop, the whey isolate is probably the way that you would want to lean. There's differences as well in terms of how those two proteins absorb. So a whey protein, and just as a quick note, absorption is the number one name of the game, my friend, right? You're only taking in as much as you're absorbing. So when you look at a whey protein or a standard whey protein, with that 83% profile, preferably, that's absorbing over the course of about an hour, 2 hours, actually. Whereas an isolate protein is very fast. If you have what's called a hydrolyzed whey protein, even faster. So depending on the filtration system or what type of isolate it is even, you're hitting what's called your anabolic window or your protein synthesis window. And so if you have a whey isolate, for example, those are absorbing within 30 to 45 minutes, which typically, and we could argue about this all day in terms of what your anabolic window is or post-workout, right? Once your body has entered a state of oxidative stress, you're wanting to replenish it with this protein. The protein is what's feeding your body. It's what's recovering your body. Your body is starving for these nutrients. So a whey isolate sort of hits that window quicker and more efficiently. Now, also, after that 45 minutes, you should be making a meal. And again, we can get into different diets and things, but if we're talking straight, protein and stuff like that, the whey isolate protein is definitely advantageous in terms of your post-workout recovery window and how much protein, so actual grams of protein per scoop, what you're absorbing. Again, it's cleaner, leaner, and as well, you get the faster sort of absorption with a whey isolate.
Great. What about casein protein?
So a casein protein is actually made from egg. When you have a casein protein, you're basically, a lot of guys, now some people will lean on this because they have dairy allergies or, whey allergies and stuff like that. And actually most whey allergies are typically actually misdiagnosed as it's a dairy issue. It's not a whey issue. Now there is other factors to that, and whey allergies are a thing, but typically it's the sensitivity to the dairy that sets people off. But a casein is a protein that breaks down over a longer period of time. It's almost gummy in our stomach, not in a bad way. It sort of gives our stomach something to chew on for a lot longer period of time. A standard whey casein, like an actual whey casein, breaks down over the course of 6 to 8 hours. You'll see a lot of guys, maybe bodybuilders, for example, or people who need to keep their motor running sort of overnight. Some guys will actually have it before bed.
Would you say that for the purpose of weight loss or toning or just kind of like shedding body fat, that something like a whey isolate out of those three might be your best bet?
I mean, I think so, especially if you're trying to keep it pretty simple. If you really are looking, get back to the foundation and the basics, if you really want just something clean, lean, a great source of protein that absorbs faster and more efficiently, then I think a whey isolate is probably the way to go. Again, there's less sensitivities involved. There's more absorption involved. You have less lactose. You have, a lot of them now have enzymes in them as well that will help you absorb the protein if you do have lactose issues. So I would say a whey isolate protein is probably the easiest and simplest to add into your regime sort of for, again, recovery, again, a source of protein just to help you recover, as well as help you with your metabolism, muscle building, and all of the things like that as well.
That's great. Let's quickly touch on vegan protein as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess kind of before I move on to, you can also find proteins, in the whey category that are a blend. So there'll be a whey blend. So you'll have some isolate, you'll have some wheys, and you'll have some caseins even. Sometimes they're all mixed together. So it is important, regardless of what you choose, pay attention to what you have, do a little bit of research for yourself. And also when you're doing research, do yourself a favor. Don't read the first thing that pops up on Google. If you can find, some journal entries, something that, I went to school. If I had to turn in a paper, right, I had to source my research, right, or my sources had to be listed at the bottom of my paper. Do yourself a favor and find some things that are actually accredited, rather than just being like, this is bad because so and so said so, and then you've agreed with that article that you've read because that's what you read. So that brings me, when we talk about protein blends, that kind of brings me into the vegan profile. You'll find many vegan or vegetarian proteins that are of one source. So you have hemp protein, pea protein, flaxseed, or whatever combination, or in this case, again, singular ingredient that they've chosen to derive the protein from. Rice, whatever it may be. There are multiple sources. We'll get into that in a second. When you look at vegetarian protein, the first thing I'll say is if you can find a sprouted vegetarian protein, that's probably better. You have a higher availability. It also will have a higher amino acid content. And when you look at these, like a hemp protein, for example, on its own, while it may agree with you and it may be good, it's going to be very, very low in protein. So you'll have probably about 12 to 13 grams per scoop. And you're looking at a much, much, much lower amino acid profile. We're going to talk about amino acids in a minute, but branch chain amino acids are a very important part of your protein profile. So in a whey protein or a whey isolate protein, you have a really good amount of absorbable branch chain amino acids. And in a vegetarian protein, typically you do not have the same amino acid profile. And so the recovery, the absorption, and the availability is much, much lower. So you're not really, while you're getting, 12 grams of protein, or you're double scooping it, it's going to cost you and you're going to run through it very quickly. That's why the sprouted option is probably best, as well as with a sprouted protein, typically you'll see they'll use multiple sources. So they'll combine the hemp, the pea, the rice protein, and having those multiple sources in a vegetarian profile is much, much better. And typically you will be able to up your availability and also your amino acid count. But either way, with a vegetarian protein, I would argue you gotta have branched chain amino acids regardless if you choose a whey or a vegetarian protein, but even more important if you do, or you are someone who's a vegetarian or a vegan, if branched chain amino acids are gonna be extremely important to your body's repair and recovery.
That leads me to the next question, of course, which is talking about branched chain amino acids. A lot of people drink them during their workout. So what's the purpose of BCAAs, and do they work? Because it's kind of a funny thing where some people in the fitness industry swear by them and others are like, I don't know if they really do anything. So tell us about that.
Okay. So I'm going to describe it to you in a way that's going to make more sense to you. Branched chain amino acids, first of all, BCAAs, are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Those are the three major ingredients, okay? That's what you're looking for in the product. There are many different ratios. Some people like a 3-to-1-to-1, some people like a 10-to-1-to-1. Let's forget about that for a minute and just look at what the basics and the foundation of what a branched chain amino acid product is. So it's those ingredients, leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Make sure that those are present in decent amounts when you purchase a BCAA product, because again, not all products unfortunately are produced or are the same. Some people add different ingredients to an amino acid product to whatever, razzle dazzle, fads come in and out. Hey, buy this because it has this. That's fine. We're shopping for BCAAs. We want branched chain amino acids. Now, what they do is you can drink them either before or during. I personally like during because of this reason. Again, we're working in time here. You're looking at, like, in terms of your workout, what happens when we're training is we don't go into the gym and our body doesn't just start burning fat and building muscle. That would be sweet, right? We'd all look like Dwayne Johnson. That is not how it works. What happens is your body undergoes its state of oxidative stress and then begins to open its anabolic window. And so what happens is in order to open this window and then fill it with nutrients, your body requires leucine, isoleucine, and valine. That is why we take branched chain amino acids. You're sort of putting some gas in the tank at the right time in order to prevent your body from leaching or taking from your existing muscle structure. Our body doesn't care, right? It's going to take the nutrients, whether you give your body the nutrients or not. Our body's an incredible machine. It will begin to leach leucine, isoleucine, and valine from first its existing dense muscle, and then secondary, if you don't have those, it will start to leach it from your organ tissue, actually. So it can be, your body will literally eat itself to survive. It's a survival mechanism. What we're doing is giving our body these branched chain amino acids in order to counteract the degradation of our dense muscle. So by having a branched chain amino acid, we're not only protecting and preserving the dense muscle that we are working so hard to attain and build, but we're also giving it the nutrients it needs to then open that window. That's when we have our protein post-workout to then fill the anabolic window with, again, a good amino acid profile and the protein, which overall helps us recover and strengthen our muscles.
That's awesome. So we got some other stuff we're going to touch on in a minute, but we're almost moving backwards here because we talked about protein powder first, which you have after your workout. We talked about branched chain amino acids, which you have during your workout. And let's talk for a minute about pre-workout, because that is a big one that I get a lot of questions about: caffeine and pre-workout. How does that work? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Okay. So the first thing I'll say before we get into pre-workout is this is never the first section that you're going to want to go to when you're shopping for any of your workout needs, really. It is important to have a strong foundational product. Like, we haven't even talked about omega-3s. We haven't even talked about greens. We haven't even talked about multis and stuff like that, right? Those things are more important than a bunch of caffeine. While caffeine is an effective stimulant, it's also constricts blood flow. So in terms of recovery, repair, and those types of things, while it will help you in terms of being mentally stimulated and help you in terms of some limited physical activity, it does have a ceiling, right? So if I'm a professional athlete and I'm playing football and I take a pre-workout in the first quarter, man, your half-life on that caffeine is not going to do you well in the second half of the game. You're going to have a crash. You're going to have things that are not going to be sustainable long term. When it comes to a pre-workout section, most of what I see that is popular or have seen over the last 10 years, most of it is highly stimulated. So high amounts of caffeine, depending on whether you live in Canada, the States, Europe, there is different, again, regulations on these products and supplements, but like some things are legal in Canada that aren't legal in the States, and vice versa. Some things are legal in the States that aren't legal in Canada. So you'll have these combination of stimulants that obviously increase your heart rate and do help you with mental and physical stimulation. And there's no question, if you take some caffeine, you're going to be energized. What you're also doing, though, is you're really assaulting your endocrine system, your adrenal system, right? So what happens is, you get especially if you got a container that's 50 scoops, you're scooping it every day, that you shouldn't do that. You're overstimulating yourself, you're going to stress yourself out, right? You're basically causing your body to oversecrete cortisol if you are, scooping that much. And some of these are like, dude, 300 to 500 milligrams of caffeine. 500 milligrams of caffeine at once? My God. I don't need to drink 2 venti Starbucks before I go to the gym personally, right? I'll probably be spending more time in the bathroom than I would be on the workout floor. Now, again, that's each their own. But if you are finding too, for those out there that are using pre-workouts that are heavily stimulated, and you find yourself, well, I take a scoop of this and I don't feel anything. And this even relates to our BCAA conversation. Well, I drink BCAAs, but I don't feel anything. Okay, well, the process of oxidative stress is happening in your body, whether you like it or not, whether you feel that or not, it is happening. And basically, if you're not feeling, 300 to 500 milligrams of caffeine, I would argue if you're not feeling 200 milligrams of caffeine, you need to look at replenishing your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are shot, they're burnt, and there's lots of things, adaptogens and things that you can put into your body, like micronutrients and vitamins. Ashwagandha is one of them. There's a couple of great products, Stress Care and stuff, that you can do for your body that's going to help replenish those things. If your car has a flat tire, you're not just going to put some oil in it, right? Like, you need to fix what the issue is. So it's important to educate yourself so you know what those things are in terms of if you're kind of feeling those side effects. The other part of pre-workout is the pump. Okay, a lot of people will misunderstand, feeling energized, so a lot of caffeine, with being pumped. Those are two completely different things. And if you've ever trained for any longer amount of time, you know the difference between a muscle swell, a muscle pump, a burn, those types of things, and just being energized, for example. So some of the ingredients that I would personally look for, you can even look for these ingredients separate. I would argue that pre-workout is anything we actually take before a workout. It's not just a section in the store, right? It's not just something that's filled with caffeine. If you look for something that has citrulline, right? Arginine, egmatine sulfide, whole baby. When you look at those types of ingredients, that's when we're creatine as well. These types of ingredients interact well with each other. They help with ATP production. They help with volume, cell volume, blood flow. That's where you're going to get the pump, the swell, and all of those things sort of from ingredients and amino acids like that. And those are actually more beneficial long term in terms of sustaining endurance, muscle hardness, again, those pumps in the workout and things like that. So those are going to be ingredients that are going to be more sustainable long term than just taking a ton of caffeine, right? These are also vasodilators, as opposed to, I said caffeines were vasoconstrictors. So vasodilation is what opens up your blood vessels. You may have more vascularity depending on your body fat percentage, but it will increase blood flow into the muscles and circulatory effect throughout the body.
That's great. Lots of great advice in there too. Before we jump back to like multis and fish oils and stuff like that, let's quickly touch on, you mentioned creatine. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about creatine, because that's another one that I think people hear a lot about.
Yeah, and I think not a lot of people, when it comes to supplementation too, I would argue, whether you're, the common man, Dusty Rhodes, or whether you're someone who is a trainer or training full time, not everybody bridges the gap between training and training with supplements. I know some trainers like, nope, you don't need any supplements, just follow the diet I have. Okay, perfect, thanks, buddy. But when you look at things like creatine, for example, they've got a bad rap, I think, and it's mostly because of misinformation or uneducation, realistically. There are multiple different kinds and forms of creatine. At its base, what it does is creatine increases your ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. Basically, it's energy on a cellular level. Okay, so when you have it working in conjunction, let's say again with a citrulline or an arginine, you've got a cell volumizer with something that's increasing the energy of your cell and recycling those cells. So basically how that translates to a workout is strength, power, endurance, you're faster off the line, explosive movements, right? So clean snatch, if you're a runner, things like this, cyclist, you can see where sort of this fits into physical activity and how it promotes those types of things. Now, when it comes to creatine, again, not all creatines are created equal. I think the longest standing one is by far creatine monohydrate. That's probably the one you'll see the most, or and lots of studies have been done on it for over 40 years. I would also argue that at this point it's a little bit bypassed by some of the other science as well. There's also creatine Hcl, and there's also creatine hydrochloride, so creatine HCl. The differences in these other creatines are going to be, they're more soluble. Creatine monohydrate is great. It's fine. But it's not very water soluble. You can see this for yourself if you just mix a scoop of creatine monohydrate and water and shake it up. There's also a loading phase that's associated with a creatine monohydrate. So you've got to actually take a lot more of it. If you do have a creatine monohydrate, I would recommend doing your creatine monohydrate loading phase. I know some guys are like, I don't need to do that. Okay, that's your choice. But I would recommend following the instructions and doing a loading phase because you're trying to saturate. What the problem with creatine monohydrate is it isn't very soluble. So you have a low absorption and a higher creatinine put out. So part of the reason that creatine gets a bad rap is because they're like, well, it hurts your kidneys, it does this, it does that. Well, newsflash, everything that enters our body is processed through the liver and kidneys. That's what their job is. It is, on you in terms of, if you have a creatine monohydrate, you have a higher level of creatinine output as opposed to your creatine uptake. So that's why you would cycle a creatine monohydrate probably 8 to 12 weeks. 12 weeks is probably the longest I would take it in a row. Again, I know a lot of people are probably like, I take it all the time. I have no problems. I just do 5 grams a day. And that's fine. But that isn't how you're supposed to use it. When you look at a crealkaline, typically these are in pills. There's a number of different brands that you can find with a crealkaline bond. They have a higher solubility. They have a higher absorption rate. Monohydrate, again, it's pretty low. That's why you load it, because you can only absorb maybe 30% of it. It's actually very low. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's quite low. Compared to a crealkaline, you're getting higher now. Again, science has improved. Believe it or not, in 40 years, we've done a couple things. So creatine monohydrate, again, I don't listen to a discman, right? Like some guys do in the gym, and those are probably the guys who are using creatine monohydrate. Again, not that that's bad or whatever, but a crealkaline is a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit leaner. You don't have the bloating. You don't have as much of the gut rot. You can still have a little bit because, again, some of it isn't as soluble. A creatine HCl, or a creatine hydrochloride, is probably the most soluble out of all of them. And those of you, yelling at the machine saying, oh no, it's monohydrate. Keep in mind that a hydrochloride is a bond that's used in all pharmaceuticals now, pretty much. There is some exceptions, but they're using it vastly in the pharmaceutical industry as a soluble chemical bond to basically help you absorb the product. So creatine hydrochloride is highly absorbable. You have very, very, very low creatinine output, and you have a high creatine absorption. It's all creatine. It's what they're bonding it with, right? So that's kind of a basic outlook on what the creatine is. The other thing is with the crealkaline or a hydrochloride creatine, you really don't need to take 5 grams. Like if you took 5 grams of a crealkaline, like that would be excessively high. You don't need to take as much of it because it's more soluble. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that's great. I think that covers creatine nicely. Let's talk about stuff like multivitamins, fish oils, just kind of vitamins in general.
Sure. Yeah, again, not all are created equal. So the first thing I'll say, let's say if we're talking about multivitamins, try to find something that is in a nice capsule as opposed to a hardened tablet. The tablets don't break down well. Often they are so mishandled in production. Some of them you can smash with a hammer and not break it down. I have had clients and customers before who have even passed the vitamin in their stool. Not good. It's just not good. So go for a capsule. Again, check and see what's in it, see how it's made, source produced if you can, right? Go to reputable sources for when you're researching any supplement product that you might be looking at. But multis is a good one because literally it's like 90% of the product, 90% of the planet is deficient. In most of these things, especially in North America, but this is pretty widespread. Recent studies are, pretty much 90% of the planet requires, quote unquote, a multivitamin. It would be very difficult to absorb the type of micronutrient profile that a multivitamin provides by just eating. Like it's literally impossible. And when you look at the landscape of multivitamins, man, there's some bad. It's like, hey, you can eat a gummy bear once a day, and this is all the vitamins. Please stay away from that crap. Anyone who's listening, it's just awful. Also, that's not how our body absorbs nutrients. You don't have one magic pill in the morning and then you have all the nutrients you need. That just isn't how it works. Typically, a good multivitamin will be in like a stack, or it will be in a layout where you have probably 3 a day, to be honest. Like a good standard multi, you're taking kind of breakfast, lunch, dinner. You do want to take something like a multi with food because those whole foods will help you transport some of the nutrients. If you are having a multivitamin without food, you're literally losing about 70% of the nutrients. So don't take your vitamin on an empty. Yeah, it's a huge difference, man. So do not take your multi on an empty stomach. Try to have something with it. A banana and a shake and a multi is better than multi empty gut. So anything you can have that way, whole foods, it will help you shuttle some of those nutrients. But yeah, multis are really important. Again, things like zinc, magnesium, even on their own, depending on what the rest of your, regime looks like. These are important systems in the body, man, which help with immunity, which obviously is a big thing these days. And other things like digestion, as well as sleep cycles and things like micronutrients get overlooked, but it's a big deal.
Tell me about fish oils. We hear a lot about that.
Yeah. Okay. So fish oils, we're really talking about omega-3s. You can actually get omega-3s from other sources as well. They don't have to be fish oil. You can get it through, there are actually vegan and vegetarian sources of omega-3 as well. Typically, those are paired with 6s and 9s. Omega-3, 6, and 9, which I'm sure everyone has heard on some basic level. 6s and 9s, I'm going to argue with you and say, really, especially in North America, you don't need. So much of the North American diet is heavy in those 6s and 9s that you don't need those. You're going to get those in your diet, but the omega-3s are important because those are the ones that decalcify blood, help with blood flow, inflammation. Those are the ones that are accredited for preventative measures in terms of helping yourself out. Heart and Stroke Foundation sponsors those types of supplements all the time. And decalcifying blood, basically how that works is if you have a calcification of your blood, right, you're looking at really hard, solid matter. It's like a sludge. So basically, you've got a buildup of bad fats in your bloodstream. Big Pete Powers eating sausage all day. I can't do it, right? You got to get those omega-3s in there. I'm just kidding. I don't do that. However, there are a high amount of bad fats, basically. Again, I'm going to reference the North American diet. When you have an influx of good fats, omega-3, it helps counterbalance this a little bit. So it does decalcify the blood. It helps with that blood flow. It's good for heart health. It also is big for brain health. So omega-3, what makes up omega-3 is EPA and DHA. And DHA is going to be that lower number on there, but it's really important. It makes up a huge percentage of the human brain, helps with our brain activity, synapses, preventative of Alzheimer's. It also is great for people maybe who have been in sports, who have like concussions, a brain injury, things of that nature, which are a developing thing in our society as well, the more we learn about that. So EPA and DHA are like essential to brain function. It can also be combined with other things like B12 and other supplements to really, you can really help if you're listening and you have, children who have ADHD, ADD, things like this, which again, becoming more and more prevalent. These are supplements that can actually really help your children over the long term concentrate and just help them with certain brain activity and synapses that will actually really help them out.
I've heard some varying things about omegas, and some people say you need to get the omegas that you keep in the fridge.
Yeah.
First, so explain that.
Great question. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. Okay, so one of the major things when you look at omega-3 is not very stable. especially if it's from a fish oil. So for example, you have a fish oil, for example, that's sealed good out of the factory and into the store. That's fine. As soon as, if you have a liquid fish oil, okay, and you take that home, as soon as you get it home, I would put it in the fridge. Because you're going to be opening it, but it's just a habit of putting it and keeping it in the fridge. It is essential to keep an opened fish oil in the fridge. If you're listening to this and you have an open fish oil sitting on your counter, throw it out. It is oxidized. It is no good. It is toxic. You cannot drink that. Well, you can, but it's not going to be a good time. And yeah, so it's not good either. Those are like adverse health effects. If you have like something that's oxidized and toxic, yeah, that is not good. We do not want to have that. So if you do have a fish oil, and you open it, you use it, you put it in the fridge, you keep it in the fridge. The other thing is you're going to want to run through that probably in 90 days. The shelf life on it, it's live, it's active, it's not, it will oxidize over time. So if you're like have an old fish oil in the fridge from a year ago, yeah, let's also get rid of that. That has probably oxidized and is toxic. So it is important to pay attention to the shelf life of your products, not just when you buy them and you look at, hey, this is my expiry date, I'm good to go. Well, it's not exactly like that when you look at a fish oil. So a fish oil is very important to keep in the fridge, and you don't want to leave it out. It actually does oxidize very fast. So if you forget it out for 5 minutes, you're cool. If you leave it out like overnight or a day or so, ooh, yeah, we might need to be looking at getting another one. Now there is also, I know, the liquid fish oil, while it does have a higher potency, and I'll get into why it has a higher potency in a minute. I'm going to compare it to the gel capsules. But when you look at a liquid fish oil, it does have a higher potency, which means it's going to have a higher EPA and DHA count, which is important. There's also the availability for a liquid fish oil, especially again in Canada and the States, for more testing. So not that a fish oil, a capsule is not tested, they're just tested differently. It's not bad, it's not good, it's indifferent. You can just find out more about a fish oil than you can about some capsules. So for example, like there's certain organizations that will test it, and you can go to their website, look up your batch number, your bottle number, see all the things that have been done to it and so on. IFOS is it's a third-party company that tests fish oil. They're out of the University of Guelph in Ontario. They actually track fish oils. You'll see the IFOS label on some fish oil products. That's a great indicator that you have a good a fish oil product. The other thing is, now you're looking at, oh, I want fish. You're wanting also smaller fish, right? Herring, mackerel, sardine. Those are all fish that are higher in omega-3s. There's a denser omega-3 count. People are like, I eat lots of salmon and I take salmon oil. Well, that's great, but salmon isn't high in omega-3. That's why the bears eat the skin and the brain and throw it back. You've got a higher concentration of omega-3 with smaller fish, right? And also those smaller fish, you're going to want them from places that have less irradiated tidal patterns. I mean, I know we're going deep on this too, but these are things, right, in our natural environment that we should be looking out to and paying attention to what we're putting in our body.
That's great. Obviously, we're throwing a lot at people right now, especially if someone's new.
Yeah, sorry.
It's great.
And good things too, so I apologize. I'm trying to get it in,
No. I think this is great. This is like literally a masterclass on supplements, especially for people who are really kind of curious about all this stuff. So I think this is perfect. If you, as someone that worked in the industry for a long time, what would you say is kind of some foundational basic items that everyone should have, regardless of what their goals are specifically? Because obviously some of these supplements are more specific for different goals and stuff. But if you're just coming into the gym, exercising, what kind of stuff should we make sure that we have enough of?
Right before I move on, I'm just going to touch on the omega-3 capsules really quick, because I said I would, and so I just want to get my part of the bargain up. Omega-3 capsules are great, especially if you're traveling. Make sure you look for high potency capsules. They typically come in a smaller gel cap. The only thing with that is typically they are heat pressed to seal the gel cap, and that actually can reduce the amount of EPA and DHA that is labeled on the bottle. That's why typically people lean towards a liquid, because it's a liquid in its raw form. It's been less processed. So that would be the bigger difference there. You don't need to worry about fish capsules oxidizing or whatever. So you're good on that. Okay, so if we're looking at three, or I'm not going to put a number on it, but if we're looking at basic supplements, micronutrient type of supplements that sort of everyone, quote unquote, needs, even if you're training or not, I would argue that you should have protein in no particular order, obviously. Protein, branched chain amino acids, a greens product, and some other form of micronutrient. So whether that's a multivitamin, or whether you've balanced, hey, my greens supplement has XYZ in it, and I take XYZ separate. So for example, to kind of round out your total micronutrient profile, if that makes sense. We didn't really talk about greens products much, but man, they are big. Again, not all created equal. Some are awful, in fact. But you're looking at important nutrients that we do not get. You could be literally a vegan or a vegetarian and not get the type of micronutrients that a specifically made greens product can give you. Spirulina, cholera, wakame, these are all nutrients and individual ingredients that are big, and they're big for digestion. So a greens product is massive on digestion, and with better digestion and digestive health comes better digestive absorption.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's obviously something I keep coming back to, especially with protein, man. Even if you are using, whether it's a vegan or whether it's a whey protein, protein is tough on the guts. Even if it's chicken, steak, whatever, right? Whatever your sources of protein are, it is harder for our body to process protein when it gets down in the digestive tract, right? That's and into your stomach. Like, you need help processing those things. Digestive enzymes can be good too. But again, if you're just sticking to basics, three of the things I'd recommend: probably a good green supplement, BCAAs, and protein. You can basically cover a lot of ground with just those three supplements. So if you were like someone who's getting started, for example, or someone who just wants to keep it simple, like, those three things honestly would cover a lot of the bases. And yeah, you can you can play within those pretty good and extend from there, because those are basic. Again, we're talking about our digestion, for greens, for example, and overall health, immunity, micronutrients, branched chain amino acids. Whether you like it or not, your body is going to break down and take leucine, isoleucine, and valine from your existing muscle structure. It's up to you, right? So then you're replenishing that, and then protein you're repairing after. And for those, again, who are like, well, I just eat after my workout. Well, that's fine, but your body's not absorbing that nutrients until maybe an hour or so later, and it's too late. Your anabolic window has already closed. Your body has already broken down its dense muscle tissue to feed itself. That's why we're having the branched amino acids. That's why we have, I'm going to use, again, isolate protein as an example, because it breaks down within that window so efficiently. You're feeding your body more efficiently. Still have your meal 45 minutes at least after you have your shake. But obviously it's going to be, again, a smaller meal, right? You're going to want to get everything you can in that, and the protein isolate is going to absorb better within that window.
Amazing. Tell me about the cannabis stuff you're working on.
Yeah, man. I'm not going to say too much, but I do have a cannabis research facility, as well as a cannabis processing facility. We're actually doing some renovations and building right now. It's all legal in Canada and government approved. So we're looking forward to do a bunch of things like that. I really hope that now that vaccines and things like that are being pumped out, and numbers seem to be trending in the right direction, hopefully things can open up, and there will be opportunity to do more things, events and stuff within that industry as well. But again, I'm not going to say too much. We've got some big releases and stuff that are coming out in the next probably 6 months. So working on that stuff right now, and very interesting. It's nice that, can do that sort of thing, and I've been pretty lucky, and I feel fortunate to have those things available to me. It's nice.
So for your cannabis stuff, can we follow you guys anywhere online? Is there social media?
Yeah, you can check out Flower Child Research on Instagram.
At Flower Child Research.
You got it. Yeah.
Sweet.
If you type that in, it'll come up. You'll be able to find it. Yeah, man, that's what we're doing. We're in the budding stages of that, pun intended, as far as the social media aspect is concerned. Everything comes along with that. There's also rules and regulations we have to follow when it comes to that. So that's all being developed right now, and more websites and stuff to come soon. We'll do a follow-up one day. I'll plug some more stuff, but I'll also be able to hopefully give some more information about supplementation. We can do direct questions or whatever you think. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone.
Absolutely. I think it'd be sweet to do a Q&A or something like that. We can compile a bunch of questions that come in from this, because I think, again, this was like supposed to be the basics of supplements. I feel like this was like a masterclass on supplements. So we went, that's great though. We went super deep, and that's awesome, because I think even more experienced lifters can learn a lot from this. I feel like I learned a lot from this conversation. So thanks for coming on, Pete. Appreciate it.
Hey man, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity. Love to do it again. And yeah, sorry man, I go off on tangents and we go down the rabbit hole, but that's the way she goes.